when that's up and running. Thank you. Chair, the live stream is up and running now. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I'd like to invite everyone to this Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee and welcome you here. We're going to begin today with something a little bit unusual. I was contacted by Councillor Lister with a suggestion, which I have to admit I probably wouldn't have thought of myself, and she suggested that we have a moment of reflection on the loss of His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh. And I actually think it would be really appropriate for us, considering all that he did for young people by way of his patronage for a number of organizations, but more specifically about the Duke of Edinburgh Awards. And I just want to read something from the Duke of Edinburgh Awards site that says, today over 490,000 young people are doing their Duke of Edinburgh Awards across the United Kingdom, and over 295,000 start a program each year. 25% of whom experience social and economic marginalization and barriers to participation. The Duke of Edinburgh Award is part of the fabric of our society in schools, colleges, universities, young offender institutions, youth groups, and more. As we rebuild after the COVID-19 pandemic, the need for the Duke of Edinburgh Award has never been greater. Through the Duke of Edinburgh Award, young people from all backgrounds and circumstances can build the self-belief, reliance, and skills that they need to navigate some of the toughest challenges any generation has had to face and meet an uncertain future with confidence. So if we can just pause for a moment of reflection about all of the people whose lives have been touched by the Duke of Edinburgh, by these awards, those who have taken part, those who've led them. And in fact, on the morning of his death, I actually had contact from one of our youth offending team telling me that this year's cohort were having their first meeting for the Duke of Edinburgh Awards that day. So if we can just pause for a moment, please. Thank you, members. Okay, if we can move on to attendance at the meeting. Do we have any apologies, Alison?
At the moment, we haven't got Councillor Bell in the meeting, but he may well join. And I've got apologies from our co-opted education representatives, but obviously it's the first day back at school for them. So as I have accepted their apologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 2, any declarations of interest? Great. 3, to approve the minutes of the meeting of this Scrutiny Committee held on the 1st of, the 1st of March. We've got those. Do we have any comments in relation to amendment, or would anyone like to move approval?
Could I move approval, please, Chair?
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Okay, thank you very much. If we could move on then to item 4, which are our performance indicators. And let's see, Jane, would you like to say something about those? And then we can take questions.
Yeah, Sharon Rain is also on the call. I'm not sure whether Sharon.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here if you want me to take you through the highlights of the report.
That would be great. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, no problem. So if I draw your attention to the covering report, which gives a summary of indicators where we're performing well and indicators where we think we need to have a focus moving forward. So not a great deal of change since the previous quarter's report, actually. Q2 report was very similar performance. So we're seeing really good performance in terms of timeliness of child protection conferences. All of our children with a child protection plan and children in care have an allocated social worker. We're not seeing children staying on a CP plan for longer than 2 years. Those plans are being actively managed within that 2-year period. We're still continuing to see an improvement in terms of our statutory visits, And I think we discussed last time that a lot of that has been access to different technologies that we've had to rely on during COVID, which actually some of that's proved to be really positive in terms of contact with children, young people and their families. In terms of children in care visits, same story, really good performance in that area and much better than we were at the same point last year. A really big area of improvement in terms of performance has been around the stability of placements for our children in care. So those that have had 3 or more placement moves in the last 12 months is down at 6.7% now, which is significantly lower than it was and lower than our internal target. And our children placed more than 20 miles away has reduced as well. And again, that's better than our internal target. I think I reported last quarter as well, we'd seen a big increase in the number of children who were getting their initial health assessment within 20 working days, and that continues to be at 100%. Annual health assessments have also seen an improvement, and we're currently at 91.7% for that, which I think at this point of the year is the highest I ever remember being, Jane, unless you want to correct me. So there's been huge improvements around that. And our children, our care leavers who are not in employment, education or training is down at 26%, which is considerably below our target of the 30%. So that is really good performance. We talked last time in Q2 around our referrals, our timeliness of referrals having dropped from what our internal target was. And this is something that we talked about in terms of we manage that every week through our weekly review meetings. So we're around about 75% in terms of referrals completed within 1 working day. But the quality of the contact inquiries that are taking place on those referrals are very much making sure that children and families get the right services at the right time. And those contact inquiries, whilst they're taking longer, they are of a much better quality. Our re-referrals have creeped up. We're higher than our target for children who are re-referred within 12 months. And there's a significant piece of work at the moment going on to look at that. The head of service responsible for that area is doing a deep dive into those re-referrals to look at whether there's any trends or any themes coming from that and any learning that we need to take forward. Assessments, we've got it there as an area that needs to improve because we are below our target, but we are seeing performance back up to where it has been in the past. It is getting better month on month.
And again, can I just qualify that? Because obviously the quality of assessments, we're really working hard on the analysis to make sure that, you know, just meeting the target of 90% with really good quality work and quality assessments is our aim. Thank you, Sharon.
Yep, no problem. And just sort of linked to that increase in re-referrals, we are seeing a slight uptick in the number of children who are becoming subject to a child protection plan for a second or subsequent time within 2 years. So again, that will be looked at in terms of that review of the re-referrals to see, you know, what learning there was from the way that that referral was handled in the past. Are there any trends or any themes that we need to be aware of as a service? And that'll be concluded in this quarter. The number of children in care continues to decrease. We're just about where we were at the end of December 2019, and members are all aware of the significant work that's happening through the Strengthening Families programme to continue to safely reduce the number of children coming into care. And I think I updated last time as well at Q2 that due to dental surgeries being closed during lockdown, our children haven't had the review dental checks that they should have had in the year. We're currently at 29.5%, which is better than it was last quarter, but still nowhere where it should be. It should be up there with the health assessments. So I know Jane and her management team have been looking at other options around that and have got a big focus on making sure that those children catch up and have their dental checks completed in this year. So that's it in terms of sort of the highs and lows by exception. I didn't intend to go through the whole report, but if there is anything else in the report that members would like to pick up on or any questions, I'm sure between Jane and I we can pick those up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon and also Jane. What I propose to do is go through the report, and if members have questions on particular pages, because I think that the overview that you just gave is really useful in relation to the percentages and the time frames, but it's often the story behind those percentages and timeframes that actually inform members. So if we could start, what I'm going to do is look at the big numbers. So if you look at the big numbers, if you hold your pages vertically, rather than the little numbers in that particular report. So if we look at page 15 with the big numbers, that's page 5 of 24 in this particular report. I know it's confusing, but we'll refer just to the larger numbers. So page 15 on referrals. Any questions or comments? No. I actually have, oh, sorry,
Councillor
Councillor Snedker. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the one that I was going to comment on when it jumped out at me. Obviously, it's good to hear that there's already work investigating this figure in action, and that's exactly what I'd be looking at as a member of this committee. The fact that we've seen that figure go up and recognise that that's a cause of concern. I was looking for a little bit more of a narrative response to that. What have we already done as far as that re-referral, because that really is a key figure for me. I look at that every time I see any data on this. The re-referral is a case where, I'm not saying someone's failed, but it's far from ideal. So I was just going to, if I throw it back to you and say, is there any more you can tell us? I know you've started a deep dive, but is there more that we can hear, and how soon will we get the results of that deep dive, please?
Sharon, can I answer that, please? Thank you, Councillor Snedker. We constantly monitor, every month we monitor the referrals to ensure that it isn't about our practice. It could be a different theme that comes in, a different incident that's happened within the family home, an additional member of the family joins, and therefore the referrals come. So every month we constantly monitor. Quarter 3 has highlighted that we've had more. We have many more incidents of domestic violence, as you can appreciate, family dysfunction that we constantly monitor. We have a dedicated service manager who does the deep dive for us in particular increases, which quarter 3 has. And what we do is we understand if it's a theme, we understand if it's an individual practice that needs to be addressed. But to give assurances and anecdotally before the findings report has been completed, what we're seeing is it's definitely individual incidents that happen of domestic abuse, different people joining the teams and blended families that come together that we need to monitor, and we need to have an assessment completed on. What we can assure is that there are very minimal re-referrals due to the fact that the previous assessment is closed and the previous work hasn't been achieved. That's not the case. Might happen in a couple of very minor cases, given the fact that families don't always want our help, and some of them are in children in need. So obviously it's a consent issue, and if people don't need our support, then they don't have to have that in a child in need situation, and all of that is managed. The report that's due from the quarter 3 will be written, and subsequently it'll go through the internal processes, and then it can be released to yourselves on the findings of that report. But we have a mechanism whereby each month we have all of the findings of all of the deep dives that we do that are scrutinised again by the director and myself.
Thank you, Jane. That's brilliant answer. You said it'll come to us. Have you any idea when it'll come to us?
No, I can't say that at the moment, but I'll make sure that you can have sight of that.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much for that. That was actually page 16. Page 15 is the timeliness of referrals. Any questions with that? I actually have a question in that aspect, and that is it's only slightly below our target. So I mean, obviously you're doing a really good job with this, but it seems that when we don't meet the target, it's because of families coming in large sibling groups. And I was just wondering if there was another procedure or mechanism that could be put in place to expedite that, because clearly if we're not meeting the target, if we're not assessing within the time period, there must be some element of risk involved. So just your thoughts on that and maybe what you're doing to address it.
Yes, the information that gathers on 3 children as opposed to 5 children is significant, as you can imagine, because there's lots more organisations and agencies, and generally it is around individual organisations having that updated information and presented to us. I just want to give assurance to your item of risk. Because the situation will be triaged within our front door, that doesn't mean to say that services won't be active if there are risks. So we never leave children at risk. Always the actions might be undertaken to put safety plans in place to start with. It just means that it hasn't moved from one team to another in readiness for the assessment. Sharon, can I bring you in, please?
Yeah, it was just to add to that we're doing some work on this indicator, because obviously our global target is 1 working day, but where Jane mentioned that we triage as soon as they come in through the front door, there's kind of a risk rating applied to those contact inquiries, and if a child's at immediate risk of harm, then that is dealt with in a much shorter period of time. And what we're trying to do is work with our IT system so that we can break down this indicator, so we could see actually if any of the children who, when the information first came in, were deemed to be at immediate risk, if any of those saw a delay, then obviously we would pay much more attention to that. I can't give you the data on that because our system doesn't allow it at the moment, but through the weekly referral meeting, when we look at those, there hasn't been any delay in those referrals that were assessed as they came through as being at immediate risk of harm. The ones that have taken longer are where the children are safe and there needs to be more information gathered around the referral. But hopefully we're going to have that into next year. We just need to do some work on our IT system.
That's extremely helpful. Thank you very much for that. Okay, I think we're moving on to page 17. Don't see anybody. Page 18. 19. I have a question in relation to page 19, and that is the children and family assessments. I'm noticing that they're rising from April to December on the bar graph, and I'm just wondering, you did touch on it in response to Councillor Snedker with themes. You mentioned domestic violence. Are there any other themes that we need to be aware of that are causing those to rise?
I would say family dysfunction, which is given. We've got lots of families who are pressured, as you can imagine, being in the lockdown. Lots of young people who are demonstrating quite challenging behaviour while they've been in the family home, and we have a slight increase in adult mental health. And obviously all of those things are triaged and collated and updated throughout that period of assessment.
Right. Thank you. So they're the main ones during
They're the main ones,
period.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. Anybody else on that one? No? Okay, page 20. No? 21? $22. 23. Councillor Snedker.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just looking at that, the number of plans, obviously there's a natural variation in that. I was just wondering whether we're expecting any latency in that as we come out of lockdown, and have we got plans in place, or are we confident that we're seeing everything there is to see out there?
Sorry, Councillor Snedker, can I have the small number, please? Because I don't have the large number in my pack.
Sorry, it's 13 out of 24, Jane.
Yeah, the child protection plans.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Yeah, child protection plans do fluctuate, as you can appreciate, but we're always at the lower end of the scale, and we monitor that because obviously being a lower, is equally as needs scrutiny as a high number. We're confident it's our decision making, so confident in our decision making from the strategies for the Section 47s, and we scrutinise every decision making process around whether or not they go to conference. We don't see a great deal of fluctuation. I don't anticipate a great deal of fluctuation. Again, it's prevalent of sibling groups being subject to plan, that can give such a variation on the number of the child protection plans, and that's how they can go up and down. And obviously, if we see any increase in one particular quarter, then you've obviously got to wait the 9 months before the children go through the process and exit at the other end. So we do see a fluctuation, but I want to assure you that we do monitor this constantly to ensure our decision making is robust.
Okay, Councillor Lucas, please. You're on mute, Councillor Lucas.
I didn't take my pain meds. I'm in pain, but I can't do anything. Right, okay. Oh, right, okay. Coming back to what the page which you looked at, Councillor Snedker brought to the attention, I'm just interested in why are we below what's happening in the region? Can you explain what's going on? Do we know?
We're not that much lower than two other regional local authorities, but we are low. We are the lowest in the region, and it's just happened that we are.
You don't know what they're doing that we're what are they doing that we're not doing, or what are we doing that they're not doing?
It's hard for me to say what the local authorities are doing in practice, but we do know that we are surrounded by people on the Tees Valley, and obviously you know there are significant issues and significant high numbers. So that it's the potential rate per 10,000 that we look at, but we're very similar to North Tyneside and Durham, if I recall. Sharon, is it North Tyneside and Durham? So whereas we're 39, they can be 40, 41. So we just happen to be the lowest, and we've always been the lowest for child protection figures around. So we just have to assure ourselves that our decision making is robust and we do have the right amount of children subject to plan. But because we're low, it again is constant one that we monitor, and that has been emphasised by the weekly referral meetings. So we monitor what we do at strategy when we make every decision about going into strategy, doing the Section 47 inquiries, and then understand what the outcome of those inquiries are, and make sure that we're not missing any children going into subject to plan. We have a lot of engagement with families, and that might be an issue as well. And so, you know, families do work with us, which can preclude us going to child protection.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That's actually a really good question, because based on the actual information in the box, it looks as though there could be something going on if we have you know, almost half of our regional neighbours. So maybe we need to follow that up and have when the next indicators are reported, maybe we could see what the actual averages are across the Tees Valley and the Northeast, if you have them, because I know that you'll be meeting with your counterparts across the region. Right, if we can move on then to 24, and sorry, Jane, I didn't realize you only had the tiny numbers.
Sorry, so no, it's fine.
24, and that's page 14 in the report. 25, page 15. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. That is page 20 of 24. And let's see who that is. That is Councillor Ali, please.
Hi. It's something actually Sharon's mentioned, Sharon Rain, earlier, which is good to see that there is some investigations going in to the work, because it is quite it's okay to, you know, get a re-referral, but the level of re-referrals, you know, it seems like, is there something missing if it's the same family that's re-referring in? So I think it's important to make sure that we're not missing anything, because when they're coming back in, they're going into a higher category. So it's important that we don't miss anything in the first place when the same families re-referring, not new families, but when it's a re-referral from the same families. So it's good to see that there is some works ongoing around that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that in relation to page 30?
Yes.
Right, because that is the placements.
Yeah, it's the placements with the children in care. So there's quite a few. If you look at CSC 228, children in care with 3 or more placements moves during last 12 months. So,
Okay,
it's important to make sure when we have the re-referrals coming in, because that's like quite a few, isn't there? So it's important that we're not missing anything and that it's looked at properly, because I think it's a responsibility. We have to look at everything properly.
Okay.
Councillor Ali, can I just clarify there as well? The placement moves are about children moving between placements. So if a child is in foster care, needs a residential unit, or if they actually move to foster care as well. So it's the placement moves while they're in their looked after provision.
Right, so not just necessarily because it's a re-referral.
No.
Right.
If a child comes into care and they're placed in a foster care, and they have to move to another foster care provision for whatever, or we move them to a member of their family, that's classed as a placement move. So it's the amount of moves that a child has during their length of stay with us.
Right, I think that's where, because I was looking at page 16 and I'd made a note for myself on page 30. So it's between those two where I've come across that bit. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for the clarification. And in relation to the placement moves, I mean, you've done great work in reducing the number of placements during a 12-month period, but still, I mean, 6.7% of children, that's 19 young people, children and young people with 3 moves during a 12-month period. So it's still, I mean, although it's greatly reduced, it still is an issue. And I know that sometimes moves are, you know, they have to happen for loads of different reasons, but still, I think we need to keep a look at that those 19 young people may have barriers to improving their outcomes because of the moves. So thank you for that. Page 31. And that is Councillor Lister. Please.
Sorry, yes, I'm unmuting myself. This used to be a problem with the health referrals, and then suddenly it's gone up to 100%. I'm just wondering what has changed and what are the definitions of actually being seen, because these figures come from health, I understand. So, I mean, what does it mean they have been seen?
We worked very hard, and I can appreciate that 2016, when I came, in 2017, we had a lot of barriers to making sure that we would, I think, the timeliness. So we understood exactly what we needed to do in children's social care to get the information across to our health colleagues. Health colleagues have streamlined, and basically it is the process between information exchanging between children's social care and the local authority and health colleagues. Children being seen means that they are absolutely having a medical assessment by a designated clinician, and that means that they can ensure that the children have been seen, and only at the point of that, when we get the paperwork back, does that mean that we get the 100%, and we have been in 100%. That is a lot of hard work. It's a lot of ensuring that our social workers know which correct information to put in, correct data to put in, and the process with health colleagues as well. So we've got a very streamlined and slick process now that we didn't have before.
And it used to be barriers with either the young people or parents not giving consent. Has that been sorted?
That's absolutely been sorted. We changed our practices right at the very start with our health colleagues to ensure that they had the right information and we were getting the right information from parents. It wasn't just about the consent, it was about understanding what was the technical and what was the legitimate confirmation that the health needed. So we absolutely have worked very hard together to ensure that the correct forms, the correct information, and the correct data actually goes to health.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, page 32. 33. Nobody checking on dental health? No. Well, I have one question about that. And I think in passing, Jane, you may have replied to me rather than committee. But what are we going to do about this? Because obviously, I think everybody who's relying on NHS dentists have had a really tough time. So there's a huge backlog. Are you coming up with any creative ideas on how we might be able to address the number of young people that need to have these checkups?
Firstly, can I just say that every child who's needed emergency health has actually had emergency health. We've had no issues about getting children the emergency dentistry that we need. What we've been looking at is understanding whether or not private dentists, whether children who need these checks can go into private dentistry. So we're actually researching whether or not that can be a viable issue. We understand that it has taken place in one of our local authorities close by, so we're looking at all of those options for our children and young people.
Great, thank you. Can I bring Councillor Renton in, please?
Morning, thank you. Just on that, how often do children in care get dental checkups in normal times, out of interest?
Annual. We can do annual. We get the 6 months as well if they need it. But generally, the statutory requirement is that they have an annual dental check.
And is that always undertaken? You never have trouble with kids not attending? Or?
Very, very few refuses, the same as the health assessments. So we try very creative ways of getting different people to see them. We have more success with the health because obviously there's lots of different clinicians and different services that can help us to assess the health rather than dentist. But no, we don't get significant refuses.
What happens
until the care leavers and older?
What happens when someone does refuse?
It's generally the older children, and we obviously try and encourage them to the best that we can.
But if they continue to refuse, they just go without? Yes. Okay.
It's not something we advocate, and it is something that the PAs work to. It's not been a registered issue though, Councillor Renton, to be honest. We know many more of the health. They don't like going to the health rather than the dentist. We don't seem to have an issue with them going to the dentist or refusing to go to the dentist.
Is it because they still get a lollipop?
I don't know. I think 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, we're much more conscious of the way we look at the moment, aren't we? So I think they like the dentist.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, page 34. No?
Sorry, Chair, I wanted to say something about the dentist.
Oh, okay. Come in, Councillor
Lister. I mentioned this to you before. I grew up in this very small village in East Yorkshire in the 50s. And every year a caravan used to come and park on the playground, and it was the dentist. So every child in the school was seen. Some of them would drag kicking and screaming into the dentist caravan. But that was a sort of way round getting to people in rural areas and things. And I just wondered whether sort of something could be suggested to the dentists about more creative ways of getting to children. Bit daft probably, but as I say, I always remember the dentist caravan coming and the queues outside.
Would you like to comment on that, Jane?
I don't think we need that really, because I think every child who comes into care has to be registered with a dentist, and we do that very successfully. And I think that the foster carers and our carers provision and residential units promote this, and it's a constant promotion. I don't think we have any issues with getting to rural. Whether or not Darlington children per se do, and other children maybe in the different areas, but certainly for children looked after, we've all of our children are registered with a dentist and have access to that dentist routinely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ali, please.
Hi, sorry, I was having trouble getting my hand up there. I just wanted to highlight something about all children in the borough that's come to light throughout all of the lockdowns. Several parents who have contacted me. And one of the things that have been a regular occurrence is they've tried to contact their dental practice where they assumed that they were registered. And when they've tried to get the children appointments, they've actually been told that because they've not attended in a certain time, they've actually been struck off their register. And I found that quite something to be a piece of work to look into, because if that's the case, and we have a lot of families out there, some people have language barriers, some people have disabilities, impairments visually, lots of different mental health issues where parents need extra interaction to make an appointment, as simple as that. But looking into all the different things, I mean, is it something just as straightforward for a dentist, just because they feel somebody hasn't been in to see them in a certain period of time, that they get struck off and the family's not aware that they're not registered anymore? It's a massive problem out there at the moment. I don't know if any of the councillors have been contacted by their ward members, but I've had over 15 people contact me with the same incident. And it's just a question of when the pain's really bad, dialing 111 and getting put through to whoever the emergency dentist is. And the emergency dentist could be in, like, somebody had to travel all the way to Eaglescliffe last week and back, and they didn't drive or have any access to any transport, and it was the first time they had to go out when they'd been shielding. So to get the train there and back, it was just like real sad to see, and there was no way they could afford a taxi all the way up there. But I'm just thinking, in the longer scale of things, it's going to affect our children's health where dental treatment's concerned, because if anybody has any barriers and aren't able to even be digitally savvy to go on and, you know, look through everything, or spend the whole afternoon ringing around different dental practices because of language barriers or whatever the barrier may be, I think that's really quite serious for children.
Councillor Ali, thank you so much for raising that concern. I think it's slightly outside the remit of this particular report, but right. What I would propose is that maybe you and I and any other members that would like to discuss this, we can have a chat and maybe then liaise with the Health and Community Scrutiny Committee, because clearly the Joint Needs Assessment looks at emergency dental treatment at hospitals. So if there's an issue about accessing for not our children in care, but accessing dental services for young people, that's impacting on that performance indicator, it might be something that we can work with the other scrutiny committee to look at that, because I think, you know, it is an important issue, but I think it's outside the remit of this particular report. Jane, I'm going to give you the opportunity to say something about that, but clearly it's not part of this report.
No, I think you're right, Councillor Hughes, but I think it is an issue, and I haven't heard that. And if anything comes through the front door, I'll check on that, of whether or not we've got any information that can contribute to your discussion that you have.
Great, thank you very much. So with that, we're going to leave the performance indicators unless anyone has anything else they'd like to raise or add. I see a little hand here, and that is Councillor Renton. Yes, come in.
Thank you, Chair. So I don't have my paper copy of the report, so I haven't got my notes, so I wasn't sure which page this was referring to. But I was just wondering what the maximum and minimum desired amount of casework per social workers was, and also, do you know what the average is? I know you might have to come back to me on these, but just wanted to make sure that we're not over capacity, under capacity, etc.
Great question. I'm sure Jane will have this right at her fingertips.
Yeah, Darlington have always maintained a caseload of 18 children per social worker. Now, obviously, that can fluctuate. Any social worker that goes over that 18 limit is monitored. We have an understanding that they would obviously only go to 2021, and the periods of time that those those children will be active to the social worker is only a minimum period, so we won't give any more children to that social worker until they get down to 18. The average is about 18, 19. We're always at the maximum capacity that we are, but we monitor that constantly and have done for many years. That is one of the things that we always have been able to maintain. Some of the more experienced social workers will take more. Some of our agency workers can take a few more, but obviously it's only for a time limited period because our maximum is 18, which is well within the government guidance.
statutory
Okay,
guidance. Sorry, not
I was going to say, where did
statutory.
the 18 figure come from? But it's government guidance.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
for that, Councillor Renton. And I think the next question, as we're going back to our favorites that we must keep account of, could you give us an idea of what the ratio of agency social workers is to our permanent staff at the moment?
We have got about, I think it's 20 agency workers throughout the whole of the department. So we've got a number of agency workers in our life stages, disabilities team, our fostering team, and our social work teams. So we've got 20 agency workers. They're currently covering vacancies and maternity cover, and very, very few have been over 2 years. We've got about 3 that have been with us for 2 years, and that's because of the experienced social workers that we need to get. Nationally, there is a shortage of experienced social workers. So we've retained 3 agency workers who are at a maximum and have been with us for quite some years. And obviously, because of the new social workers coming in, they're called what we call ASYE, Associate Year of Employment, and we support those social workers through a yearly programme until they're through their training. And then once they become the experienced social workers, that will release our agency workers.
Okay, are we on an upward trend, or are we holding firm?
We're holding. We're absolutely holding with our agency workers, and always our aim is to reduce. At the moment, it's the life stages team, the children with disabilities, where we've got a few in there that we wouldn't normally have. That team has been quite stable, but due to maternity leave and things, that's where we're covering with agency workers, which is positive for the life stages team. But yeah, as soon as those social workers return from maternity leave, the agency workers do cease.
Great. And one final question, because we haven't seen statistics on this in some time. What's the approximate ratio of looked after children, as opposed to placements from outside Darlington? Is it because there was a time when we were almost at parity? So we have 284 looked after by a Darlington local authority. What's the approximate? And I know it's usually our near neighbors, and we place their in their places as well. But what is it, Jane, approximately?
It's actually more or less the same. I think we've got, Sharon, can you remember? I think we've got 178 children off the top of my head. I think we've got 178 children who are placed from outside the area in Darlington, as opposed to to date, we've got 268 children, because obviously this report relates into December. So we've got 268 children looked after in Darlington, and I think we've got about 178. I'm just drastically trying to find the report that I'll not find, but I will find it by the time we've gone. But yeah, I think it's 178 children that are placed from other authorities in Darlington.
Thank you, Jane. It would be useful if we could have that. I know we've asked for this as a committee before, if we could have it maybe twice a year, just because it does have an impact on services, that are supplied by schools and, the general approach. So that would be useful to us. Anything else before we move on? No? Great. Then thank you very much for that thorough reckoning, and also to Sharon. Thank you. If we can move on. If we could move on then to item 5, which is our work program. And normally we just have a quick flick through here. Are there any issues that anyone would like to raise, or anything that anyone would like to potentially add? Kind of a dangerous thing to do as we near the end of the municipal year. It might be better to add things when we begin the new year. Okay, right. I don't see any hands. So if we could then move on to item 6, which is supplementary items. And we actually have a supplementary item. And hopefully everyone has received a hard copy. You will have all received notification of the item by email on Friday, but hopefully you've received a hard copy on Saturday. Everybody's okay with that? Great. So I'd like to hand over to Alison, because I received some amendments to this report. yesterday, and I think all members have them in front of them. So Alison, could you tell us what the position is as far as procedure with the review report?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. The final report of the review group obviously is presented to scrutiny members today to basically approve or disapprove the recommendations that have been made. If members have further additional comments to make, there isn't a problem with those going in a covering report as the comments from the scrutiny committee as the report moves forward, because I think one of the recommendations obviously is to move it onto cabinet. So those additional comments could be noted in there. If members can't come to agreement today on the recommendations of the actual final report, there is an option to refer it back to the review group to make further consideration again, and then again it would follow. It would have to then come back to the scrutiny to move forward. So if that was understood, that's the options members have.
Okay, thank you, Alison. So I'm going to give the floor to Councillor Cruddas, because it was actually Councillor Cruddas who went through a great deal of trouble to come up with some amendments to the report itself. And my understanding from what Alison just said is that we won't be able to do that at this point to amend the report, but that we could, with the agreement of the committee, include it in the covering note to cabinet. So Paul, would you like to come in and just speak to the amendments that you proposed and whether that would be acceptable to you to include them in the covering report should the committee agree the report? And I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm on mute. Well, I emailed to all the members of the committee the changes that or the additions and adjustments that I wanted to make. I didn't believe that, I thought today that this was the first time that the committee had seen the report and that it was effectively a draft, and that there'd been no sort of round of comment on it before. So the comments I've made, I felt should be included in the report rather than as an addition to the report. So I'm rather disappointed that we think it's not that's not the case. I don't know. Some of the things that I said were typographical. Some of them were just changing the emphasis of things. And do you want me to go through every line, Cindy? I can do that if you wish. I
think members have seen them, and I think that if we had had more time, we could have considered them, because I think some of them would actually have added value to the report. I'm not denying that, but I think that the difficulty is that the meeting that we had delegated responsibility for finalizing the report and pulling it together to Councillor Snedker and myself with Alison, and that's the problem, because we delayed the actual process because we wanted to get the children and young people when they were back in school, so it could have been safer for them for safeguarding reasons. So I mean, I think we all understand what happened with the speed. So now it's just whether your amendments are, deal breakers, really, whether you think that without them the report doesn't, say what we wanted it to say. So I'm going to bring Councillor Cully in, Councillor Cruddas, and then you can come back in as well. Councillor Cully, please.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I mean, the comments that Councillor Cruddas has made, I think they need to be in the report. So if we have to go back to another task and finish to discuss all the points that he's raised, because it's not that it's just one point or even two or three. There's a whole report of amendments and things that we need to discuss to go in it. So rather than doing half a report, I think it needs to at least come back to the task and finish before we put recommendations forward, because these are the big things that he's put forward in the report he's given, and I agree with the things that he's come up with. There's a lot of things in it. We have to be careful of trying to cure the world with the report. We can only do things for Darlington, which is why I think it needs to come back to the task and finish. That would be my view. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to comment on the report and this particular issue? see who that is, and that is Councillor Renton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Was it your decision to not include them, or is it a process decision? So I just want to get a better understanding of that.
I can clarify that, Chair, if you want me just to speak to that. Yeah, Councillor Renton, it's purely what happens is the review group is the review group as an entity of its own. It makes the recommendations that then go to the scrutiny committee. So it's up to you as a scrutiny committee to either approve, your role purely is to approve or not approve the recommendations in that report. And as I mentioned, if the scrutiny are not happy at this point, it would get referred back. I mean, minor typographical errors, factual errors, we could amend those quite easily. But if it's quite substantial changes to recommendations, that would have to be for the review group to reconsider. So your role, as I say today, is to either agree or disagree to the recommendations that are put forward. It's not your role to amend the review group report as such.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Cruddas, are there any of your amendments that you believe would have to be in before you could agree?
I just think that my whole purpose of doing this was to get a report that was 100% acceptable to all members of the group, and I didn't really expect there to be a vote on whether we accept this report as it is or not today. There was a request came out with the report for comments, which is what I've done. One would expect that as a request came out for comments that they would be considered and either put into the report or not put into the report. I don't see why this is a problem. Most of the things I said were additions. There were some items that I wanted to make clear that were not in the gift of the council, and some that were not COVID related, because clearly the report stretched our thoughts outside of the sort of parameters of the report, which were to look at what children have been affected by COVID, and we looked at lots of other things, which was good because we got a very open dialogue with the people we asked to come to report into the report. So I just feel that the report should go out as a single item with all the thoughts of everybody. And are there no other people have made comments as requested against the report? I don't know that. Am I the only one that's done it?
Councillor Rendon, Councillor Cruddas, we actually took comments that were incorporated. So after the review group meeting, that's when comments were suggested. So notes were taken by Alison, and all the things that people said at that meeting were included to the best of our ability. I mean, obviously, this report is not going to be perfect and won't meet everybody's expectation by 100%. And I think it was even you at the review group meeting that said, you can't have everybody writing a report, and that's why it was delegated. So I understand your disappointment in relation to having those clarifications as far as the things that maybe we did stray outside of the original remit of the review group. And if we could include them in a covering report, that would be fantastic, so that we could meet the deadline to get it to cabinet within this municipal year. But if it's not possible, then it won't be possible. So if you're unwilling to have them included in a covering report, you need to say.
I think there's if there goes a covering report and effectively become an addition to the report, that's fine. I just don't understand why it needs to be done that way. I think it's just as easy to amend the report and make it a single item. Okay.
And Councillor Renton, you'd like to come back in again, please? And I see one other. Who's that?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is again to Alison. What weight do comments have in a report?
So all it would do is if your recommendations, if agreed today, would go to the cabinet meeting, and again, if you had the covering report, it would just be for them to consider the comments that have been made on top of the review group comments, so to speak, like what Councillor Cruddas is putting forward. So again, it's there for consideration. I mean, if members obviously are struggling to come to a decision today, the other option, as I say, is to refer it back to the review group, but that causes delays, but that, as I say, that's entirely up to members' decision. But those are the options. Either Councillor Cruddas, as he's mentioned, his comments get included as the report goes forward, because obviously that's your recommendation. Well, the scrutiny proposed recommendation is to forward it to cabinet, so Councillor Cruddas's comments could go along with that. But as I say, if members aren't happy with that approach, Councillor Cruddas isn't happy, there isn't really any other option other than to approve it outright or refer it back.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cully.
Thank you. We've spent such a long time coming to this conclusion and coming to this report that I think it's a pity that we've just trying to rush it through at the last minute, and it ends up not being what we all wanted, because we all had high hopes of the report itself. I think it needs to come back so we can all agree the final report. I know I've said it before, but I don't think I can agree to the report as it stands at the moment, because I do think that it needs to reflect the things that Councillor Cruddas has put in as his comments. So I'm sorry, I can't agree to it today. I think it's too rushed, and I want it to be right. You say it can't be perfect, but I just want it to be right because it's an important piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cully. Councillor Snedker.
Thank you, Chair. You're right that as far as timeliness, there's a tension between getting it out quickly and getting all comments involved. And you're right, there was a request for comments earlier on. And those comments, were at all possible, were included in the report. So it's good to see that the report was shaped to a certain degree by members' comments. But in balance, also, Councillor Cruddas has in the report, there are some minor typographical errors, which is good to see improved. There are some comments of emphasis, which I would support, but there are other ones which do change the emphasis of the report quite a bit. So unfortunately, as we understand that because of procedure, we're in a position of yay or nay today, or refer back to group. I would like this to be a unified decision. I think it would carry more weight coming from the Scrutiny Committee if it was a unanimous report. And unanimity does have strength, and I'd hate to see minority reports on a subject like this coming out. So I always try and go for consensus. That's the way I work. So if we could agree how we will attain consensus and over what time, and whether that would that delay would weaken us at all, I'm not sure it would. I know we've got civic year end to think about, but if we could attain consensus and strengthen the report, at what cost would that be?
Okay, thank you. And I see a hand from Councillor Barch.
Yes, I just wanted to echo what Councillor Cully said. I think we do need to be spot on with this and right in this. And if we weren't able to consider all this fully, I don't think I would be able to vote for either at this stage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barch. Anybody else have anything to say in relation to the time frame? Councillor Snedker has raised that. Maybe we can have some clarification in relation to that. If we didn't make the May cabinet meeting, when would be the next cabinet meeting that this could go to?
Sorry, Councillor Chair. The 8th of June is the next cabinet meeting after the 4th of May meeting.
Okay. So the 8th of June, my concern is that the children and young people who took part need to have some feedback and a reaction. And if we could get the report agreed, and then we also promised a child-friendly version for them. So it's, you said, this is what we've done. This is what we're proposing to cabinet. I think the 8th of June might actually meet that criteria because the children will still be at school. So if we were minded to delay, that could possibly work. So Councillor Credis, can I bring you back in?
You've put yourself on mute.
Sorry, I didn't wish to delay this thing. I thought we could go through the amendments that I'd suggested. With the members of the review group are all here. We could go through them by line and get thumbs up or changes, and that would be the review group resitting. Why can't we do that now?
I think the difficulty is the procedure. I thought that it was possible to do that too, but I sought advice, and the advice that we received, Alison, can you come in again?
Yeah, just to confirm, the review group is a separately sort of separate body to the scrutiny committee today. I know all of the scrutiny members were obviously invited to attend the review group, but not all members attended every review group meeting. So obviously the scrutiny committee are meeting today, and some of them weren't members of the review group. So it's sort of they can't really comment on the review group work as such. They're just agreeing the recommendations, which is why, as I say, it is a separate body with a separate terms of reference, and that's why the scrutiny today we're just to look at the review group recommendations, not to actually sort of comment as such on the whole review, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So when could we reinstigate the review group in an attempt to get this thing out very, very quickly? I mean, could it be done by a Skype meeting tomorrow, or how soon could we do it?
I think it's my understanding that it would have to then go to a Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. And when is our next one?
Oh, off the top of my head, it'll be, well, again, June. So it's 21st of June.
21st, yeah.
So that means that we won't meet the 8th June.
Oh, of course not.
Cabinet.
No.
So if we were to delay this, it would come back to Children and Young People on the 21st of June. When would it then be able to go to Cabinet?
You could ultimately have a special meeting. You could have a special, if you needed to, you could have a special scrutiny meeting purely just to approve the final report if you needed to. Yeah.
I think I think we could be able to do that very quickly. I'm very keen to get this. I'm as keen as you, Cindy, to get this to the Cabinet. I think it's an important report. And if we have to have a review group reconstituted and then another scrutiny committee, then we can put in the things that's acceptable or ditch the things that are not acceptable, and then we only have a report. We don't have anything outstanding then. I'm happy to go ahead and spend whatever time necessary to get this report out quickly.
Okay, Councillor Snedker.
Yeah, I agree with that. We could have a review group scheduled with a special Children and Young People scheduled immediately afterwards. And I can imagine if we all do our homework, that could take an hour and a half, an hour for a review group, half an hour, 15-minute Children and Young Person, and that would allow us to expedite. You're talking about the 8th of June. I've got 1st of June as Cabinet in my diary, so I'm not sure whether that's changed and it hasn't been updated in Teams. But yes, the children deserve a quick response. But they also deserve a full response. And I think we're edging ever closer to consensus on this. So that's something I would support, a special one after the other that would do the trick.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Snedker. We've had a really good discussion on this. Are there any members who also would like to come in? No? Then
sorry, Alison, could you just confirm, is it Cabinet on the 1st of June?
I'm just going by the calendar I've got, so I need to double check on that. As I say, it may well have been changed since the calendar I'm referring to, but I'll double check and let members know for definite.
Thank you.
Okay, well, as chair, I'd like to put a proposal to you that we do defer this report and send it back to the review group with the intention of reconvening that and calling a special Children and Young Person Scrutiny Committee to hopefully approve those recommendations that we'll then do. My only concern is that I think that we'll also need to be very specific in relation to deadlines, because if we're sending it back, Paul's had the chance to do a fine bit of work to have amendments. But if other members would also like to have that opportunity, maybe they missed it, to set a deadline for comments that we can then consider at our final meeting of the review group. So are we all in favor of that? Yeah, okay.
Chair, you got Councillor Lucas had, oh, sorry. I thought it was more further comments. She was just putting a hand up saying she was in favour. My apologies.
Okay, I think we have consensus for that. So we'll do that. And Alison, can I ask you to liaise with me and we can try to find a date that's
Certainly.
suitable to fit in with everybody's timetable with other meetings?
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. So with that, I think that's our last item aside from questions. Any questions? No? Then great. Thank you very much for your contributions at the meeting today. And thanks to all officers for their answers to our questions. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank